Greetings, regrets to season 4, episode 6 of the Rink.com's Blackhawks Rinkcast, live from the Puck Hockey Studios inside the quarantine bubble. Today is Wednesday, February 17th, 2021, and I am your host, John Jaeckel, better known across the interwebs as JJ, that Jaeckel guy, or worse from there. With us tonight is special guest Frank Nova of the world-famous HockeeNight blog, and for the unfortunate few who call themselves Cubs fans, fully croissant Dies is ein Baseball blog. Greetings, Fork.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you for being here, my friend. It's always quite entertaining.
And we do cover the White Sox also.
Excellent. All right. So your stock is rising with that statement. Also here, as always, are two of the usual suspects. Andy Campbell. Andy, how are you, man?
Doing well. How's everybody out there? Hope you're doing great despite the cold. Stay safe, stay warm.
Love it. Sean Fitzgerald, also known as Sean Goldstein, the blogger to be named later. Sean, what's happening?
Another day in paradise. Just sporting some of my new rink wear that my wife bought for me to support us here. So, and golden jet today.
Ooh, nice.
Number 9, and the brim is gold. So
Whoa.
Nice.
the inside of the brim is gold.
You need a gold grill to go with that.
Too hot.
Let's say, is that a brim or is that a balcony?
I know, right? I should get my Edrin James grill, and I'll be ready to go.
Well, Sean, your shameless plug of puck hockey and rink gear at Puck Hockey is a nice segue into, as always, all Rinkcast shows are brought to you by puckhockey.com, PUCKHCKY.com, where you can get all kinds of high-quality, custom-designed hockey apparel and lifestyle gear, including the exclusive Rink line, which Sean is modeling tonight, and I'm modeling as well, including this quite warm and comfy blue and black Rink logo flannel. Recommended to you at puckhockey.com. I believe this one's going for about $49.99 right now.
Thank God I didn't wear it, John. We would have been matchy.
That's right. Oh, that would have been awesome.
You would have both been lumbersexuals.
All of which you can get for 10% off with the discount code The Rink, all caps, no spaces, at puckhockey.com. So, gentlemen, let's get down to business. Tonight, for a change, we're going to spend a fair amount of time breaking down what's going right with the Blackhawks. But we're also going to look at how much of that might be luck and how much of it is a really positive sign for the rest of the season and beyond. And one big area where there are still some troubling signs for the future, because what would a Rinkcast be without some negativity about the Blackhawks? So, guys, let's get started on our first topic. We've talked already on the last couple of shows about Kevin Lankinen. But I'm going to take a slightly different take on this, and that is his stellar play. Is it sustainable, especially as teams get second and third looks at him through the schedule? And I'm going to turn this one over to our guest, Frank Nova.
Well, I think it will be, because I don't think he has any kind of a unique style about his goaltending to where there's going to be much of a book on him. I do think he's got to get his rebounds under control. It was funny, before the game started tonight, Ed Olczyk was talking about his rebound control, and I actually think that's part of his game that's kind of wanting. But I'll actually say something good about Jeremy Colleton, which is completely off-brand for me. He's been really good at making sure that no team gets a second look. When they're playing the back-to-back games, nobody's getting two looks at either Subban or at Lankinen. So the goaltending right now is basically covering a lot of ills. Lankinen was really good in the AHL last year. He was an all-star. So, there's definitely the potential there for him to be a starting goalie in the NHL.
Andy, what do you think? Is it sustainable?
Yeah, we're going to find out, and we're going to find out. We might find out relatively soon. I mean, if you were to crunch some numbers and look at NHL stats and want to get into the numbers game on him and get away from his style, you will see Tampa Bay, Florida, and Carolina as, some of the higher, mostly those teams are mostly in the top 10 in any offensive categories in the NHL. And so there might be more of an onslaught coming his way we just went through all the nor'easters literally, across the country. His might be delayed a little bit until March, but we'll see. So, I mean, I guess time will tell. I mean, he is kicking him out though. When you're hot, and you can ride that wave for as long as it's present. So is it sustainable? Possibly. But I think the road is going to get tougher. It just will. So, and the Hawks are going to have to get, they're going to have to find other ways to win. Besides just relying on the backstop there.
Yeah. We'll touch on that. We'll touch on that. Sean, what do you think? Lankinen's play, is it at the current level, is it sustainable?
I think I'm gonna have to agree with Andy. I know I do that a lot, but I think we're gonna find out. Tampa Bay, he didn't see him either time they played him early on in the season. He's gotten a little fat playing Detroit. This is his third time playing Detroit, I think. So his numbers have gotten inflated that way. So we're gonna see. I mean, his save percentage was at .938. Now it's dropped to .925. So it's coming down a little bit. I don't know. At this level, it would be, as Gate referenced in previous shows, it'd be like Eddie the Eagle. And I don't know if he can sustain that for his first full year.
Yeah, I think, and I think that I'm with Frank. I think he has the potential to be a starter. And if that's something that the Hawks come out of this season with, you can count that as a win. Because before this season, I don't think there was anybody that we could point to and say that person's going to potentially be the starter in net for the next 10 years or 5 years even. And but I do think he's showing that kind of mojo, if you will. And I'm not going to pretend to be a goalie or goaltending expert. I mean, our resident goaltending expert isn't here right now. So, but I do think he plays with a lot of confidence. His teammates and the coaching staff and the organization seem to be big believers in him. So he seems to have something that they can work with going forward in the future. But I also think that his numbers are going to come down, and he's probably going to settle below 920 for save percentage. And frankly, with the defense he has in front of him, that would be outstanding because they give up a lot of shots. We're going to talk about that too. So, all right, let's move on. We spoke last week about the power play, which going into action tonight was ranked 4th in the league. 4th, the Hawk power play. I mean, it's kind of amazing. And so and we talked about last week about why that's happening. The fact that not just the puck is moving, but the players are starting to move now. And in so doing, it's creating open scoring lanes and opportunities. And, for some reason, finally, either the players or the coaches or both got the memo from the other teams around the league who run successful power plays. Regardless, it is clearly better. They're doing things better, but the level at which they're at now, which is top 5 in the league, is that sustainable? And I'm going to go with Andy next.
No, it's not. I don't see it. I think they've gotten some good puck luck. I think that they've certainly been creative. First of all, full credit to the redesigning of their power play. I mean, it's been great. There's been some great weaponry, but they've been moving the puck a little bit better. You're seeing Beaudin now in the first team power play, and he's showing that he can handle a puck. Their zone entries have been a lot better. But again, now all of a sudden, people are talking about the Blackhawks power play. Where I don't think coming into the season this year, I don't know if there were too many teams whenever they were going to man down against the Blackhawks, in the first 5 to 6 games of the season going, all right, guys, watch out. I mean, this is a unit. I mean, they didn't have that reputation. So almost more, I think there's going to be more of a book focus on that than on Lankinen. And so I don't see it being sustainable just for personnel. That first unit is pretty good. The second unit, not as good on paper. And so it's been great, but it will probably slow down at some point.
Sean.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to be top 5, maybe top 10. I definitely don't think we're going to be in the era where people are going to cry on Twitter, decline the penalty. I don't think we're going to be in that era again. I like what they're doing on the power play, and Yeah, they're having a little bit of puck luck. I believe they're scoring at over 20% on their power play. I think
Over
that's what
30 right now.
okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So that's going to come back a little bit, but I think they can still be like a top 10 power play in the NHL. That's nothing to, as opposed to years past where they were 28, 27. Like, I think that's something to shoot for. And I don't think coming into this that I thought the power play would be anything special. I thought special teams was going to be like a disaster, like it's been in years past. So, yeah.
All right. Thank you. Frankie.
Well, you already brought up the fact that they're moving a lot more, and I think that goes a long way towards the power play being a lot more effective. In years past, what you get is they get the puck to Kane, and Kane would dangle for about 40 seconds before the puck left the zone.
Right.
And everybody else on the team basically just had the best seats in the house to watch Patrick Kane's stick handle.
Right.
And now you've got guys moving around a lot more. And also the second unit, while they haven't been getting the goals going on, they have been getting a lot of movement going, and they don't have that one single guy who kind of holds the puck while somebody tries to get open. So, I mean, yeah, they're certainly not looking anything. They're not going to make anybody forget the 80s Oilers, but I do think it's a more effective power play. And and the fact that bodies are moving, and maybe this was something that needed to happen where a lot of the veteran players just aren't there. And these younger guys just, they don't have the Quenneville power play system just ingrained into their brains the way that some of the other guys did.
That's my problem. I have all kinds of stuff ingrained into my brain.
That's my new single with Cypress Hill.
Hey, brain. We're old enough to remember that, Frank. So you raise a really, really good point, though, and we've been talking about it for a couple of years too. How they used to basically sit there transfixed by Patrick Kane overhandling the puck on the half board, and he tried to take a shot or he tried to pass the puck, and it just wouldn't. He'd either get stopped by the goalie or would go out of the zone, and that was it. But now they're moving, and I think. That's why I think it is somewhat sustainable. I don't think top 5 sustainable, but I think top 10, like you said, Sean, is quite realistic. Because one thing the Hawks have in abundance, especially among some of their veteran players who are still around, is they have creative players. And Alex DeBrincat and Patrick Kane, and even the much lamented and much maligned Dylan Strome is a creative hockey player, albeit can't really skate and is soft as baby poop, but he's creative. So they have with those assets, they should have a good power play, because you're 5-on-4 or you're 4-on-3 sometimes. And that you should be able to take advantage of that with your creativity and puck movement and player movement, which leads me to my next point for the esteemed panel. The Hawks have won 4 games in 3-on-3 OT. And the season is not that old. They've also lost 4, but they've banked 4 valuable points through 3-on-3 OT. I'm going to point something out here that the Hawks the last few years, they haven't been good at many things, but they've been good at 3-on-3 OT. So my question, I have sort of a twofold question here for you gents. One, is this sustainable for them to bank fairly regular points in 3-on-3? Number one, and second of all, in light of the fact that it's a great way to get points in the regular season, but it's worthless in the postseason in terms of an ability.
Frozen John.
I got disconnected.
He's back.
He's back.
But it's worthless in the postseason in terms of being able to score, because you don't have 3-on-3 OT in the postseason. So I'm going to ask you guys, how do you feel about this proclivity of the Hawks, if you will? Because like I said, they've been good at 3-on-3 for the last few years with Gustafson and Kane and Strome and DeBrincat and Taves, but not this year, Taves. But what do you guys think? I'm going to turn it over to Andy.
Well, first of all, I'm going to have to look up proclivity in order to accurately contribute. That's a big
that is a 75-cent word.
Yeah. Busted out your thesaurus.
Just send money to my PayPal, baby.
Yeah, no, that was pretty impressive. I'm feeling a little inadequate right now, but I think one of the things, and we've talked about this in our podcast, DeBrincat's reinsertion into the lineup has certainly helped them in 3-on-3. I mean, the bottom line is you need offensive weapons, you need really good skaters, and you need guys that are patient with the puck who can shoot. So I don't think their recent success and obviously his contributions there are evident. But and sometimes I know I've used the term puck luck again. I mean, you are one bad decision, one odd man rush, one post, one shot high off the glass from losing an overtime game. And so they had a couple chances in some of the early season sessions where it didn't go their way. Patrick Kane would be out there for 4 minutes and trying to do everything he could. But the bottom line is it's fine if they win games 3-on-3, but ultimately, I guess where it frustrates me is if that's how they're going to win hockey games, one, that's probably not a good recipe for postseason hockey. But not only that, it's not a good recipe to get into the postseason. So then if you're winning games and you're getting that extra point, you're not exactly tanking like we thought they would hope, but then you're just going to be that kind of middle ground, not making the playoffs, 12-16 first round pick, and you're just kind of stuck in that neutral. It's entertaining as hell. I mean, 3-on-3s are great. But I would love to see them win a game in 60 minutes, which they haven't done with regularity. And if they can get to that point, that would be great, but we'll see.
Andy, you have a nasty habit of jumping ahead to our next topic.
I'm sorry.
Without knowing it.
I'm sorry.
No, it's good. It's good. It's really good, actually. Frank, what do you think?
Well, first of all, going back to the power play for a second, the Hawks just got another power play goal, Kurashov.
Oh, I'm on delay. Oh, here. Wow. Woo!
But 3-on-3 hockey is tailor-made for any team that has Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat.
Yeah.
You got two guys with that much scoring ability. And, Andy, you've talked about puck luck. Last year was an incredibly unlucky year for DeBrincat. He could not shoot a pea into the ocean off the end of a dock. He was just not getting the puck in the net at all. This year he's back. He's shooting with accuracy. So you've got that first unit that's Kane and DeBrincat, usually with Duncan Keith. But the other thing that's helping them out a lot this year is they've got a really strong second unit with Suter and Kubalik. Sorry, drew a blank. So my phone is blowing up. So apparently this is a goal that we're definitely going to have to watch when we're done.
It's
anyway.
It's
Stash has a great tweet about it. So I retweeted it. Stash has a great tweet about it.
Anyway,
of the year so far for the Hawks, no question.
But yeah, back to what I was saying is, you've got that depth that, and again, 3-on-3, it's a complete aberration. It's like, the runner starting at second base now in baseball. It's fun. It makes it a little bit fun, a little bit more challenging, but it's worthless, like you said, when the rubber meets the road, when we get to the postseason. But as far as it being sustainable, as long as you've got Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, absolutely.
Sean, what do you think?
I think it's 100% sustainable. I think another thing besides Patrick Kane and Alex DeBrincat, this team has a little bit of speed. And I think that's what you need in 3-on-3 hockey. You've got to be able to, and the ability to beat your man one-on-one. Like, how many times do we see Patrick Kane deke somebody and find Alex DeBrincat streaking in the net, or somebody just Pius Suter charging the puck? I mean, last game, Beaudin had a great outlet pass to Suter, who then found Kubalik for the game winner. So, and that's your second unit.
Yeah.
I think the Blackhawks, like Frank said, they're totally built for 3-on-3 hockey. The NHL implemented it to make it more entertaining, which it is, because 4-on-4, I swear the majority of the time the Hawks went to 4-on-4, they ended up in the skills competition, aka the shootout, which is boring.
Yeah.
Is it sustainable in the future? I mean, I don't think any of this is sustainable. Let's be honest. I don't think they're 3-on-3 winning. Yeah, it's like it's like they're contractually obligated to go to overtime because they want to give us more hockey, and then they want to win in overtime. That's, I think, the only way they can win. So It's not going to get them in the playoffs. It's not going to be successful in the playoffs. Is it fun as hell to watch? Yes. Are they going to rack up points and probably be in NHL purgatory? Yes.
Yeah.
But I enjoy it.
Yeah. It's interesting. I'm trying to gather my thoughts on this. It leads me to my next topic, though. Oh, so it's interesting. The last game against Columbus over the weekend, I was watching in the third period. I really noticed how, and I think even the announcers even commented on it as well, that Columbus was basically dominating the boards. Every 50-50 puck was going to Foligno or to Boone Jenner or, one of those guys on Columbus. And Dennis Rasmussen, you said, no, what's his name? Soderbergh. I call him Dennis Rasmussen. He looks like Dennis Rasmussen.
Way back.
And he's Swedish. But Soderbergh, uses gets in the slot, uses a Columbus player as a screen, and gets one past Korpisalo, and the Hawks go to OT. And there, within a minute, they use their skill and their use of time and space and their talent to get a goal and take 2 points. Where if Soderbergh doesn't get that goal, which was kind of lucky, they came out of that game with 0 points and 0 points for the weekend, and Columbus would have gone home with 4 instead of 3. So I do think they're getting a little lucky to a degree, and it really leads me to a point. We did a deep dive yesterday and today on our Rink chat on 5-on-5 play. The Hawks' numbers in 5-on-5 are absolutely garbage. And I just, I listen. I love what's going on with this team. The young guys, Philip Kershev and Pius Suter, and you see Mitchell coming along and Beaudin coming along. But my concern about this team has stunk 5-on-5 for a few years, and I'm just not seeing. I'm seeing more of these guys who are going to be useful in the power play and in 3-on-3 than guys who are going to be difference makers 5-on-5, because 5-on-5 hockey, the thing that makes it challenging, and it's why playoff teams are good at 5-on-5 hockey, is that it's big boy hockey. It's bumping and grinding and winning loose pucks and doing the hard work around the nets. And the Hawks have been horrible at it because the Hawks have a bunch of small skill players who prefer the perimeter. And they're even worse in some ways this year without Taves. And we dug into some of these numbers. So they've played 3 to 5 more games than all the teams in their division except Detroit and Columbus. 3 to 5 more games than Tampa, Florida, Dallas, Carolina. They're 5th in the division in 5-on-5 goals, and that's playing the most games in the division. They're tied with Detroit for 5-on-5 goals. The top 4 teams in the division in 5-on-5 goals, Dallas, Tampa Bay, Carolina, and Columbus were all playoff teams last year. And that's because 5-on-5 scoring and 5-on-5 goal differential matters. It's the hallmark of a good team and a team that will compete in the playoffs. And I'm not here to be negative about what's going on this year, because like I said, there's a lot of good young talent showing and emerging. But concern is I just worry about this team. I just don't see, aside from Kirby Doc, I don't see any players who are going to become the Marian Hossa, Brandon Saad, Jonathan Taves, Andrew Shaw type players for this team that are going to make them a better 5-on-5 team. Their numbers 5-on-5, especially their offensive 5-on-5 numbers, like every single, every stat, unblocked shot percentage, high danger chances for, high danger goals for, they're like 24th or worse in the league. And like I said, this isn't something new this year. This has been going back the last few years, and that was with Taves and with Saad. So I want to turn this over to you guys. Because my concern is not so much this year, because they're not going to the playoffs this year probably anyway. And if they do, they're going to get destroyed in the first round because of what I'm talking about right now. But this has been a problem for years, and I think a lot of it does come back to it. Some of it might be coaching, but I think some of it also might be the types of players Bowman keeps drafting. And so I'd like to get you guys' take on it. And Frank, what do you think?
Yeah, I agree. They they've got a lot of skill, but there does need to be some size into it. And you talked about Hossa, you talked about Taves, but you also need to have like those third line guys. You need to have some Andrew Ladds in there.
Yep.
Guys who won't necessarily show up on the score sheet, but they're the guys who are going to get into the dirty areas, dig the pucks out.
Yeah.
And they just don't have those guys. They don't have the size, they don't have the strength. And those are things, I mean, you don't have to draft strength, you can develop strength, but you do have to draft some size.
Yeah.
You can have a Kane. Kane is kind of an outlier because Kane is not physically tall, but he's built like a box. So, he can get pucks in the corner. He can get pucks on the boards. He can do that sort of thing. I do think that the Hawks will be in a position, especially depending on who does and does not retire after this season. They'll be in a position where they'll have enough payroll flexibility to start looking to get those guys that are already developed. They're not going to need to go and draft and build these players. And also with the expansion draft, right now I've pretty much inked in Cole DeHaan going to Seattle, so that'll free some space up also. Somebody's got to go, and I don't know if you have the
Johnston Murphy, one or the other.
Yeah.
Well, they're. If you look at what the Blackhawks have on their roster, they are going to have trouble finding guys to protect because they have so many first and second year players, so many guys who are not going to have enough games in,
right, to
where they might not even be able to protect all the forwards that they're allowed to protect. And they really come down to two defensemen. You can protect either Murphy or DeHaan. You can't protect them both. So they'll protect Murphy, they'll lose DeHaan. But that's still going to be another $3 million on top of possibly Shaw, possibly Seabrook, possibly Taves. It's going to be Christmas morning for Stan Bowman.
And if I'm Stan Bowman, I want to go out and get a Boone Jenner type player or a Nick Foligno type player, not another Zach Smith, another guy whose best days are, 3-4 years behind him. But Andrew Ladd is a great example because I think the Hawks mentality has been, let's have a bunch of super skilled superstars and then Brandon Bolig or Andrew Shaw or somebody. Shaw was a pretty good example of this too, though. Guys who could chip in some goals and play up and down the lineup, but guys who are going to win a lot of 50-50 pucks and are going to be nasty as fuck to play against. Pardon my French. I hope the kids aren't listening. It's late now, so we're probably good. I just think that they've got to find those guys somewhere. And you're right, Frank. It's probably going to have to be through free agency because drafting those guys and developing them is going to take a while, and they haven't really drafted those guys.
And you see the forwards that are coming in. The only forward that came in with a grown-up game was Kirby Dach, who never spent a minute in the Hawks farm system.
Right.
He was a fully baked cake when they got him.
Andy, what do you think?
Well, so if you forecast ahead to the Blackhawks offseason, I think there's two kids that you need to, that will be RFAs that I think you do want to bring back. And I think Suter's up for one, and I think Brandon Hagel you need to prioritize. My biggest fear is if they do not protect Hagel and he ends up in Seattle, I'm going to be very upset.
More Hagel. I'm with you.
But Brandon
Hagel's a first-year player. I don't think he's eligible to even be drafted.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I don't think he is. I think Frank's right.
I don't know what the rules are, but
it's the same rules as it was again in Vegas when Vegas
good.
had their draft. They haven't changed the rules.
Well, at any rate, you talk about Andrew Ladd. Brandon Hagel fits a lot of that, and you need more players of that fabric. Now, I don't. Maybe the Hawks will strike gold somehow and will decide not to protect Dylan Strome, and he'll end up in Seattle. When we talk about Christmas morning, that's what I'm hoping Santa Claus delivers to me. But, so I think that we talk about 5-on-5 play, and I know I bag on Dylan Strome a lot, but he's not a very good 5-on-5 hockey player. He is not a good enough skater. He's fine on the power play when he's got room. He has no, he's your 1A center right now, and he has no 5-on-5 points in the last 5 games. And that's just not good enough. And so, you need, and to your point, JJ, we haven't had that kind of element in a few years. And that's because you've been relying on Jonathan Taves to play so many different roles.
Right.
Where he's asked to be, a checking center and be your first line center and score for you. When we don't have as much sandpaper in the lineup, as the Blackhawks would like. And on those cup contending teams, I mean, Zeus was slow, but he was physical.
Oh,
and,
he was great.
And even Brad Richards had adapted his game at the center ice position to be incredibly useful in that role. And, we'd all love to see another Marian Hossa, sure. But free agency is where that has to happen. And Stan Bowman is going to have a lot of money at his disposal. And so rugged players needs to be part of that, because you still see some of these young kids, even in 5-on-5 play, getting to the net and that middle lane drive. You don't see it as effective. They don't back off defensemen. They're not scary.
Right.
When you see some of these bigger rugged teams, and you see even the Lightning or the Boston Bruins, the Bruins have guys like Coyle and Smith. When they've got an odd man rush or a 3-on-2, and that middle guy is driving to the net, you can see the penetration on that defensive unit moving back. The Blackhawks don't really have that threat. They just don't. And they also don't have some of those guys that are focused on the things that they need to do forwards in their own zone and able to just safely clear pucks. So I agree. I think the free agency is going to be the key piece with adding some of that element.
Sean, what do you think, buddy?
Yeah, I think the sandpaper going in the corners kind of left town after 2014, 2015. I honestly think that's when it really ended for the Blackhawks. Their forward, I mean, like Andy said, Brad Richards. I mean, they had Marcus Kruger, he could win pucks in the corner. They had Brandon Saad, Brian Bickle. Like, they had bigger type forwards that would help them possess the puck. That's another thing. Like, when you have those sandpaper guys who can win the puck battles, you possess the puck longer. And that's what made those previous Hawk teams so good. They possessed the puck for minutes on end. The end of the I think it was 2012-13 in game 6 against the Kings. I think for the last 30 to 40 seconds of that game before ultimately Mike Richards tied it and they went to overtime, the Hawks were just playing keep away in the Kings zone with the puck. They'd go into the corner, somebody would win it and swing it back around. And we don't have that anymore. No. To Stan Bowman's credit, mark this down, he has started to draft bigger type players. I think the last 2 drafts he's addressed, like, trying to draft height, at least on defense. He hasn't drafted a small defenseman since Boquist, but I think they need that. And if they can get a guy like, they're missing a guy like Troy Brouwer too. Like, everybody's talking about Andrew, like Troy Brouwer was a guy like that too, played the third line, sandpaper-ish, 6'2", 6'3" or 6'4", could score goals. And they don't have that. Yeah. They're missing that element to their game. So that's why puck possession struggles. And that's why they give up so many shots a game, because they don't possess the puck. So
Troy Brouwer spent more time in the pony than in the corners. And that's why Troy Brouwer stopped being a Blackhawk.
Yeah. Well, and I would love to, ask Jumbo Joe at some point, be like, hey, what was it like in 2010 playing against Dave Bolin?
Boley was the nightmare for the Sedins, Joe Thornton. Like, he was just.
But the Hawks don't have a pest right now.
An agitator, no.
They don't have
agitator that actually plays well. Andrew Shaw tries to be that, but he commits a dumb penalty and negates all of it.
And he was not. He wasn't nearly as sort of out there as Bolin was, but quietly he played that Bolin type of game. I'll never forget when Ryan Kessler just melted down on Marcus Kruger in the 2015 Western Conference Finals.
Yeah.
Kruger was that type of player too. And Bolin and Kruger were 2 guys that were not really big guys, but they both played big. I mean, Pound for
I think,
pound, I've
both of
never
them.
seen a guy better along the wall than Marcus Kruger. I mean it. He was amazing how he would come out with pucks against guys twice his size, and there's a tendency to not, for people not to appreciate that, and I get it, because it's stuff that doesn't go on the score sheet, but it's stuff that leads to stuff going on the score sheet, in difficult situations and in big games, and I think we're all on the same page, it's a vastly underappreciated aspect of the game, and people confuse it with big hits and meatball hockey and fights and crap like that. It's not what we're talking about. It's not what we're talking about. What we're talking about is that greasy work along the walls and around the nets, and the stuff that just doesn't make the highlight reels but makes the highlight reel plays possible. And the Hawks need a lot more of it. They really do. And you need a guy. Those guys need to be able to score some goals sometimes and jump in the play and be part of the play. And they used to have a lot of those guys on the cup teams. They did. So that's all good stuff. So what, Frank, this is your first time on the show this year, and we've talked a lot about the young players. What are your takes on some of these young guys? And I know we're not necessarily expecting any of them to turn into, all-terrain forwards at the second coming of Jonathan Toews. And a lot of these guys seem to be kind of the same profile, smaller, skilled guys, but they all seem to be taking, a nice step forward this year. I mean, Suter and Khrushchev and Mitchell and Bodin. What do you think?
Well, I think one of the best kept secrets that the Blackhawks have is Brian Campbell. And Brian Campbell has worked so well with a lot of these young defensemen, and that's why Nicholas Bodin, spending that year in Rockford, did wonders for him, because he worked so closely with Campbell, and it's turned him into an effective NHL defenseman. And truthfully, I'd love to see the Hawks have the fortitude to take that step back with Boquist, have him go to Rockford, have him be the guy for the rest of the season. He's your number one defenseman. He runs your first power play unit, and just have him work with Campbell, have him come back next year and be ready to move into that role. And, and Mitchell clearly has been working. I mean, he's wearing Campbell's number. That's how close he's been with Brian Campbell. So the young defenseman and what Brian Campbell's doing with him, I think, has really been great. I'm really looking forward next year to seeing what happens when Vlasic goes pro, because that's going to be a big body guy who can be like your big stay-at-home guy, and he's got a really well-developed game. I've been able to watch some film of him, and I'm not going to, as much as I would love for him to be another Brent Seabrook, I just don't know that he's going to be that good. But he's going to be a good big guy who can eventually down the road maybe be a top 4 big body, stay-at-home, puck blocker, that sort of player.
I don't know if he's going to be the same kind of defenseman that his, I believe,
Marc-Edouard Vlasic.
Marc-Edouard Vlasic.
Yeah.
His, I believe it's his cousin or second cousin.
Yeah.
Player either.
No,
Vlasic was a hell of a skater, and I'm not sure that our Vlasic is all that terribly mobile.
No,
but he, if he could learn to use that size, that would be huge.
Yeah, he's and his positioning actually looks pretty good. He looks like he's pretty much got a pro game already.
Yeah.
I don't know. I live out in Boston. He really had a tough freshman year in Hockey East, but hopefully.
Yeah.
Hockey
East is pretty much, it's almost AHL caliber hockey, and you saw what the extra time in college did for Mitchell.
Yeah, I mean it depends who you're playing in the Hockey East. I think it BC, BU, and then Lowell and a couple other teams. But
right.
I agree with the Brian Campbell statement. I think that's great. Brian Campbell, when he first got to the Hawks, he was working a lot with Paul Vincent. I mean, Paul Vincent did wonders for a lot of those young Hawks.
Yeah.
When they were just starting their careers. I think huge shout out to Derek King and what he did with a lot of those players in Rockford for the 1 year that they were there. I mean, it's, a lot of the kids that are playing really well right now made the most out of their AHL season last year. And they've been doing a great job. I mean, with Kurashev and Hagel and Lanky and a bunch of those guys. And so, I think if the idea is development, that's how you got to do it. And I completely agree, with the comment on Boquist, that I think that he's been hurried, and we've talked about it before. He's been a little hurried. They wanted to sell jerseys. They wanted to put this guy's name out there and say, this is the next coming, where he really needs some refinement in his game.
Do you know how many AHL games Boquist has played?
It's like 10 or something.
15.
Yeah.
The only I've been looking at it lately. The only 8th overall picks since 2010 that's played less games was Zach Wisniewski. He played 7. Other than that, every guy drafted in his spot has played more games in the AHL than Adam Boquist.
And I do worry. I really hope that's not their intention with Wyatt Kalynuk. I mean, he gets 1 power play goal in his first game, and just, all the Chicago media is going, this kid's going to be in the NHL really, really soon. Everyone look out. And it's like, hold it.
Yeah.
Regula is another one, or Regula, who I think has a lot of promise. I've talked about him before, and he's been struggling in Rockford, and so good, fine, keep him there. Learn, kid, keep working at it. So
when I watched Boquist, I mean, like last year in the playoffs, there were a couple of times when he got burned for goals, and you could just kind of see that he was like really chastising himself. And I feel like the big thing with him now is he's kind of lost his confidence, and going down and dominating in the AHL for 25 games, and just getting a sense of his game again, and how good he can be, might be the best thing for him before he comes back to the NHL. It feels like it's psychological with him at this point. And, he's never going to be a guy who's going to make us forget Duncan Keith, because he's not really that kind of player.
Right.
He's more like a Brian Campbell actually than a Duncan Keith. And, or an Eric Carlson, that's the comparable you hear for him, and which is almost unfair, because he may never be that good either. But, he's got to find his game again, and get his feet underneath him a little bit and regain some confidence, and then come back. And I just get the sense that he's the kind of kid who probably won't, melt down over it, that he'll be able to handle it. But I could be wrong, and that may be why they're not doing it. I don't know. But it seems like, and Frank, it's funny because we've been talking about that for weeks, is that we all feel like he probably would benefit from a little more time in the minors at this point. Sean, what do you think?
I really like what Frank said about Adam Boquist needing more time in the minors. I think Brian Campbell and I think Derek King deserve a lot of credit for, especially like Nicholas Beaudin. Scott Powers had a great article that he just put out, I think today, breaking down Beaudin's last game and all his shifts, and just how his game has kind of evolved since being in Rockford last year, where he wasn't even like a top 6 or 7,
right.
Like he was a bottom pairing defenseman. And like Andy referenced earlier, now he's on the first unit power play, and took Duncan Keith's spot on that. So Beaudin's ceiling obviously is a little lower than Boquist. Boquist, I think, is more high-end talent, but you've seen what putting the work in Rockford and then translating it to the NHL and moving people along at the right speed. I think we've talked about many, many times how the Stan Bowman hype machine gets going, and then he doesn't know how to slow it down. And that's to the detriment of guys like Dylan Sakura, Adam Boquist, and other such players like that. So
I mean, I think it's a really good point. I mean, there's a lot to be excited about, but I still see it just gives me the heebie-jeebies when I see people start to talk about Kirby Dach as the next Jonathan Taves, or talk about Beaudin and Mitchell as the next Keith and Seabrook, which I literally saw a guy saying that who's involved in an argument with our own Eric Andrews on Twitter. And he was talking about Mitchell and Beaudin being the next Keith and Seabrook. The problem with those types of statements is it creates expectations that are almost impossible to fulfill. it's not fair to the young players, and it's really disrespectful to the old players. The bottom line, and I guess the gist of what I kind of wanted to come away with tonight, get you guys feelings on, is I feel like, there are some exciting young players now emerging in the Hawks system and the Hawks organization, and even at the NHL level, but that there really still is a long way to go before we're talking about buying playoff tickets and planning parades. I just hope that the fans and the organization, which tends to drink its own bathwater, historically they've had a problem with that. I hope that they'll keep their eye on the ball. And, for example, they are playing well. And what if in February, gosh, what am I saying? It's February now. But what if prior to the trade deadline, they're still in the playoff picture, and then they decide that they don't want to offload some of these older guys for draft picks, which is what they should do. And these are the kinds of things with the Blackhawks. And I think the fans in the Blackhawks get into this negative feedback loop of believing that all that matters is winning 2 playoff games this year. It doesn't matter, and that's part of the reason I think that we get branded as being negative, because we keep wanting to be realistic and think about the future and not this short-term craziness that goes on every year, So I'll get off my soapbox now. But anyway, this has been a great conversation, you guys. And do you guys have anything more on hockey before we start talking about Frank's blog?
Well, the one thing I'm hoping happens before the deadline is that Dallas gets their heads out of their asses and everybody gets healthy and they leapfrog the Hawks. So nobody can realistically talk about a playoff run. And at that point, they can stick to the original strategy of offloading guys for picks. And the one thing that I know Andy talked about his dream of Strome getting drafted. And I think Strome might get drafted, but not from the Blackhawks. He could be a guy that the Hawks trade prior to the draft to another team so they could leave him unprotected and leave a guy they like protected.
Right. And I think maybe that extra year with his salary to help Seattle hit the floor somehow.
Is he he's still an RFA after this season, correct?
No, he signed a 2-year deal.
Oh, he signed a 2-year deal. Okay, that makes sense then.
Yeah.
I don't know if Stan is that smart, but I hope so. We'll see. I actually think Stan really likes Strome, but
yeah, well, Stan could also just kind of homer into it because somebody's going to come to him and want Strome specifically for that purpose.
It's the reclamation project. Stan Bowman loves trading high draft picks, former high draft pick for former high draft pick. That's how he got Michael Frolik.
Here, you guys have forced me now to apologize for Stan Bowman, because I believe that Bowman has sort of learned his lesson with these double downs on bad trades he's made. I think he learned a lesson with David Rundblad and a couple of the other ones. And I agree. I think he's probably going to move Strome at the deadline, because Colleton is striking me as a guy who kind of tells it like it is, and I don't think he's buying that line of BS as much maybe as some in the organization are laying down. And I think Strome is what he is. I think there's probably some team out there that's going to take a chance on him fulfilling his promise, even though it's become more and more apparent now in a second organization that he's going to be a limited player. He's sort of Artem Anisimov 2.0 with a little more offense and a lot less defense, and
a higher hockey IQ. I will say that about Dylan Strome.
Yeah, he does. He does have a higher.
He's a creative guy, but
just can't.
Slow and
that's what makes up kind of for some of his shortcomings as a skater. His high hockey IQ. Say that 3 times fast.
He has a ton of skill. His first 2 strides are slow for the NHL level. He's just not quick.
He's a slightly better. You remember Drew Leblanc?
Oh yeah,
Drew Leblanc.
Hobie Baker finalist.
I remember his YouTube.
Minnesota St. Cloud.
And he was a guy
St. Cloud State. That's right.
He knew what he needed to do. He knew where he needed to go, but he just couldn't get his feet to get him there.
Yeah.
And Dylan Strome is a slightly better version of that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, he's
Drew LeBlanc.
Jason Krog 2.0, another Hobie winner. That was kind of his deal when he went to the Islanders. Just didn't have that speed, but
Yeah.
Or what I read an article that they're trying to ship Jimmy Vesey out of town already in Toronto today.
oh, really,
Yeah.
Yeah, because he's not very good up there.
I don't know.
I have a question though.
Tough media market.
Andy, do you wake up in the middle of the night and just say Dylan Strome like at 3 in the morning? Do you just say that, or
I do, and it's usually I've been wearing a mouth guard now because it's usually with gritted teeth.
I think about what new hat I'm going to buy in the middle of the night. That's what I think about, and what rink wear I'm going to buy because we need more stuff. I'm almost out of it. I've almost bought all of it.
I need to stop. I'm a little tough on Dylan Strome, but I just when you. A lot of people bought in when he was first skating with DeBrincat and said, "Oh, we got something here. And
Right.
I was very happy initially when he got to Chicago because I thought that, as a former 3rd overall pick, that change of scenery and high draft pick for a high draft pick, and now it turns out it was just a guy for a guy, and when Stan had all the chips at his disposal, knowing that Strome was an RFA and he still gave him $6 million, that was the end. So that's where I'm coming from. Thank you for this therapy session. I am seeing someone on the side twice a week just to talk about Dylan Strome issues, and it's clearly not working. But I'll keep trying.
I don't think I've had a good hate for a Blackhawk for a while now, but that's excellent. I still remember the first year I was back in Chicago after living in New York, and I had the Hawks game on, and my wife and I were going to go out somewhere. I had the game on. I'm on the 2nd floor where the TV is. She's on the 3rd floor getting ready, and all she heard me yell was, "Shoot it, you asshole!" And from the floor above, she just goes, "Samsonov."
I've over the years.
That was my good hate.
Yeah.
Over the years, I've had a few good hates, but there's probably, I have to say, and I've followed this team for a lot of years. I probably no player I've hated more than Eric Gustafson. I just hated him.
Yeah, the Gus bus. You were.
Yeah.
And I was so glad when they got rid of him. And that's why, the Gustafson trade to me was I think it showed a little bit of maturation of Bowman as a GM.
Yeah, sure.
And recognizing that a guy, even though, he sold tickets and a lot of the fans liked him, he was a guy that ultimately was not going to be part of a winning team in Chicago. And, that's why I think it's a similar logic with Strome. And I think that's why we're going to see Strome get moved here. If not at the trade deadline, then before the draft. But Johnny, Andy happy too. So that's
you think Stan Bowman, I get the maturation and stuff like that, but shouldn't he have traded him the year? Do you think he traded him a year later? He should have traded him the year before, like when he was riding high. With all the, yeah.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never said Bowman had good timing.
Okay. You were saying maturation, and I was like, hold on.
There's like the Nick Leddy trade. He waited way too long. He lost all his bargaining power. The Patrick Sharp trade.
Yep.
He waited way too long.
Trevor Daley.
All his bargaining power.
That's the guy I hated, Trevor Daley.
He
did not fit. He did not fit.
He didn't fit, and Q hated him from the beginning. And
Sure.
But you had to recognize what Daley was.
Right. They didn't know what he was. The Penguins figured it out.
Things went just fine for him after leaving Chicago.
Yeah. Pittsburgh, Stanley Cup. Yeah.
2 cups in Pittsburgh. So that was nice. And I don't know. And the Stan Bowman, the signing of Dylan Strome was probably a lot easier for Stan to do after Doc and Taves. The injuries and the concern. That signing happened after those 2 players were deemed out for the season.
Same with Carl Soderbergh.
Yeah, right. So
Carl Soderbergh.
Yeah. Who's actually Carl Soderbergh has played some pretty decent hockey these last 5 games.
He's not a terrible player. He's a decent 3rd line center in the NHL is basically what he is.
Exactly. And I think that he could be a good chip to move. You need to keep showcasing him. You need to keep putting him in situational spots.
Because he's the kind of player teams are going to want at the deadline. Teams love to get that Sammy Paulson, Marcus Kruger type center at the deadline, and that's kind of what he is.
Janmark might be in that.
Janmark, yep. I was going to say him, Janmark.
Yeah.
Yep. Just can't trade them all. Can't trade them all because you still got to have somebody play those positions. So
play the kids, I say. Frank, let's talk Fully Croy's and Design baseball blog. What's going on with that?
Well, we do a podcast when we get a chance, when everybody's sober enough to do one. And we really talk Cubs on the podcast. At some point I do want to get a White Sox one going. We've got one group of people that will write about the Cubs and talk about the Cubs. We've got another group that will write and talk about the White Sox. So basically we're covering all of Chicago baseball.
Awesome.
And I haven't done it in a while, but I will switch it because I'll cover a lot of history. We had a feature catcher of the week that I fell down on where we covered a different Chicago catcher every week. So we would do a Cubs catcher, we would do a White Sox catcher, we would do catchers from the Chicago American Giants of the Negro League.
Oh yeah.
We would cover things like that. We have a feature where we each write about terrible games that we've been to, because everybody always writes about that one memorable game, like, oh, I was there to see the Cubs win the pennant. It's like, look, I was at the game when the Cubs won the pennant. That to me is not nearly as fun to talk about as the game I went to where the Cubs lost 22-0. That was a great game. It was during a teacher strike. Rennie Stennett went 7 for 7. That's a unique game. The Cubs winning the pennant, 40,000 people were there, and another 1.5 million say they were there and weren't. Yep. And, everybody knows that game. Talk about some terrible game when, Willie Stargell hits one onto Sheffield Avenue in the 9th inning after the Cubs lead the whole game. Or, I've been to Sox games. I was at opening day for the Sox in '77. Bill Veeck was the owner, and his idea was to have the fans throw out the first ball. So everybody who came in got a styrofoam baseball that said Chicago White Sox opening day 1977. And so they count it down. People throw out these styrofoam baseballs, and they go around with one of the machines that they use like at a driving range and pick up all these styrofoam baseballs. Problem was a lot of people kept the balls in their pocket. So throughout the game, they were playing Boston. Throughout the game, every time there was a fly ball hit into left field, Jim Rice would be looking for the fly ball, and all of a sudden about 24 of these styrofoam baseballs would come flying out.
That's awesome.
It's not like Jim Rice needed any help being bad at fielding.
No, he was a hitter. He was a designated hitter in the outfield.
Yeah, Frank, I like that. I love that. I got to start thinking about that. Some of the worst games I've been to, just in general. I think that's maybe that brings up negative memories, but I like my father. It's whenever we talk about baseball in the 80s and somehow the Phillies come up, he's like, oh my God. He's like, every single Cubs game I went to, I swear to God, Mike Schmidt hit 3 home runs.
Well, I was at his 4 home run game.
Oh, there you have it.
Well, it was a weird day because it was like 75 degrees on a Saturday in April. Saturday or Sunday, I don't remember which. I grew up fairly close to Wrigley Field. I was in Uptown. It was like 15 blocks to the ballpark. And back in the 70s, the bleachers were all day of game sales. General admission they had general admission in the grandstands. Those were all day of game sales. So you could decide the morning of the game whether you want to go to the game or not. Basically, if it's a nice day, you go. So we went not knowing, we didn't even really know that much about Mike Schmidt. He hadn't really established himself as a star at that point.
Yeah.
And that was the game that pretty much established him as the guy who would just murder the Cubs for the rest of his career.
Every time he was at Wrigley.
Yeah, he hit 500 and I don't even know. He hit like 800 home runs against the Cubs.
Awesome.
Good stuff. Yeah, I'm looking forward to baseball season this year. I really have no idea why I'm looking forward to baseball season this year, but
the Sox are going to be good, man. I'm not a Sox fan, but they're going to be good.
Oh yeah.
That's why they play the game. So we've got to see. On paper, they look really good, and it's exciting. And it's it's springtime, right?
Let's see how the genius does managing that team.
You mean DUI La Russa?
That was an awful hire.
Oh, that yeah. And then I don't know if you saw this, Fork. It came out recently that Jerry Reinsdorf knew about the DUI, didn't tell anyone, and hired him anyway.
Yep. Yeah, Rick Hahn's got to just be overjoyed about that whole thing.
Yeah.
Hold on.
Let's not go into that.
I got a really bad baseball game story. I was at one of the 6 Brett Anderson starts for the Cubs in 2017. I think he went like 2 innings. I was underneath. We had great seats, but it rained the whole game. But we were underneath, but it rained the whole game. Brett Anderson gave up like 6 runs in 2 innings, and then they scored 4, and then they brought in Justin Grimm, who gave up consecutive home run balls. I spent $60 on a blanket for my wife.
Jeez.
Yeah.
I think with the Cubs, my worst games are any game in the Jerry Hairston Jr. era. I think it's probably he's right up there with Strome for me. So,
All right. On that note,
anyway,
folks,
at any rate, yeah.
Let's wrap this thing up. We'll have Frank back. Maybe we'll get a little closer to baseball season, and we can dive a little deeper into baseball. Right now, I'm having
difficulty there, JJ.
The Tony La Russa rabbit hole was one I didn't want to go down.
Hey, you put the hat on. You had it coming.
Yeah, I mean, JJ, you probably were the Disco Demolition.
Oh boy.
Actually, you know what I did? I saw it on TV. I didn't go, but I saw it on TV. I was into all kinds of misdeeds at that point in my life. So anyway, but that's another rabbit hole we won't go down. No. All right, so you can find all of our comprehensive content at www.therink.com. You can find Frank's content at Is it fullycroisen.com, Frank?
Yes, it is.
Fullycroisen.com. If you're familiar with Heilmann's Old Style, you'll know how to spell that. Frank, you want to go ahead and spell it anyway?
Yes, it's Fully, Fully, Croisen, Krausened.com.
No umlaut.
No umlaut. It's named for Joe Croisen because Old Style beer was fully Croisen, which was a guy named Joe Croisen taking a leak into the beer vats.
No way.
I don't know. It sounds good.
Okay. Wow, you had me going there.
Outstanding.
And Hockey Night, HockeeNight.com, correct?
That is defunct.
Is it defunct? All right.
It is
I
defunct.
wasn't sure, but it was good while it lasted.
Yeah, 8 years.
Yeah.
8 years of absolute stupidity and
The glory years, as it were.
Yeah, if Jay Blanc weren't bald when it started, he would have torn his hair out from some of the stuff.
Oh gosh. You can find us on all the popular social media at The Rink Official, at The Rink Shy, at The Rink Colorado, at The Rink Columbus, at The Rink Seattle, at The Rink Toronto, at The Rink NWHL, and at The Rinkcast. Andy, give me your digits, buddy.
Andy Campbell 16, my Twitter account.
Right on, Sean. Diesel.
Yep, DIESAL 3426.
Right on. If you get a chance, please head over to iTunes, rate us and review us. We really appreciate it, especially the good ones. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedules to download, listen, and support us. Thank you, Frank Nova of Hockey Night and fullycroisen.com for joining us tonight. One of our regular returning guests, and we'll have him back again soon if he's willing to join us. I don't know after tonight, especially with the Tony La Russa detour. Until next episode, see you all, Rink.